It's been almost 48 hours since Donald Trump announced his tariffs. The world is still reeling. There's been a bloodbath on the stock markets. Investors have lost more than $3 trillion. Experts are predicting a recession. American companies are among the worst hit. Their tech giants, which depend heavily on global supply chains, are bleeding money. Countries are hitting back at the US with tariffs of their own. Some others are hoping that talks will make Trump rethink. We will bring you the full impact of the tariffs that have hit the global economy as hard as the Wuhan virus. Meanwhile, 3 years into the Ukraine war, Western companies want to return to Russia. But Putin has set one condition. We'll tell you about it. After slapping tariffs and arming China's neighbors, the US is talking to Chinese generals. We'll discuss what this is about. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi met Bangladesh's Yunus and told him to quote-unquote avoid rhetoric. Now the Prime Minister is in Sri Lanka and a defense deal between New Delhi and Colombo is on the cards. Back in the US, the TikTok sale deadline ends tomorrow. Who will buy the Chinese app? What's the $682 billion live shopping craze? And is ChatGPT creating fake Aadhaar and PAN cards? All this and more lined up. The headlines first. Donald Trump says he wants direct talks with Tehran on a new nuclear deal. This comes after he threatened to bomb Iran if it develops nuclear weapons. Trump has given Tehran a 2-month deadline to reach an agreement. Last week, Iran had ruled out direct talks with Washington. In his first term, Donald Trump withdrew the US from the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. Germany to arm its military with exploding drones for the first time. Berlin says it's boosting its defense to counter threats from Russia. Both Ukraine and Russia have fielded such single-use drones which can hover over a battlefield until a target is identified and then detonate on impact. South Korea's constitutional court ousts its impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol. He has been sacked over his declaration of martial law last December. Yoon's removal triggers fresh presidential elections, which must be held within 60 days. Yoon is the second South Korean leader to be impeached. UK comedian and actor Russell Brand is charged with rape. He is also accused of a number of other offences, including sexual assault. The comedian turned wellness influencer has denied the allegations. Brand is a former husband of pop star Katy Perry. And it's a world record set by a rat. Yes, you heard that right. A landmine hunting rat in Cambodia has set a new world record by sniffing out more than 100 mines. Decades of war has left Cambodia littered with mines.
You are going to be so proud of your country. You're going to be so proud of your president. We're going to turn it around and we're going to start winning again. We're going to win so much. We're going to win at every level. We're going to win so much. You may even get tired of winning and you'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore. Mr. President, it's too much. And I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more. We're going to win so much.
Donald Trump loves winning. You just heard him say that. His tariff plan was built on that promise. Trump wants to win global trade by waging a trade war. But today, there are no winners. Trump's trade war is making everyone lose, and the stock market is the biggest loser of all. The sell-off has been brutal. Just look at the numbers. America's Dow Jones, the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, UK's FTSE 100, Germany's DAX, Japan's Nikkei, and India's Nifty. Every major index is in the red. It is a stock market Armageddon, and it was induced by the Trump tariffs. Now look at the losses in one day. American investors alone have lost some $2.4 trillion in one day. $2.4 trillion. This is the biggest one-day wipeout since 2020. And that was the year the pandemic struck. So basically for the markets, the tariffs are proving to be as deadly as the Wuhan virus. And India has not been spared. Investors here lost some 9.5 lakh crore rupees today. That's over $110 billion, all thanks to a trade war that no one asked for. Trump says he's not surprised by any of this. He was expecting the markets to crash.
First, we'd love to get your reaction, sir, to what's going on in the financial markets today.
Well, I mean, it's to be expected. This is a patient that was very sick. It was a sick patient. It went through an operation on Liberation Day, and it's going to be a booming country, a very booming country. It's going to be amazing, actually.
Trump says the US economy is sick and tariffs are the cure. But as things stand, the cure is hurting more than the disease. He's right on one point, though. The sell-off is not surprising at all. Investors are jumping ship. They are dumping stocks because their investments no longer reflect the new reality. We are in a global trade war, and like all wars, it is chaotic. Donald Trump has not set any deadlines. He looks prepared to drag this out.
What we have is a set of tariffs based on what they've been charging us. That's reciprocal. And those tariffs have come in, and every country's called us. That's the beauty of what we do. We put ourselves in the driver's seat.
Some US trade partners are already hitting back. They have imposed retaliatory tariffs on the US. Others are mulling their options. We'll tell you more about this in just a bit. For the moment, let's look at the US president. He has targeted 60 countries and trading blocs. Not everyone will be able to strike a deal with him and get out of this. So if you're an investor, this is a tricky time to make bets. Be very careful. No one knows how this trade war will shape up. There is significant risk both in the short and the long term. Global agencies are sounding an alarm, like the International Monetary Fund or the IMF. Its head, Kristalina Georgieva, has issued a warning. She says Trump's tariffs threaten the global economy. Georgieva has appealed to the US that the IMF does not want a protracted war. They want America to end these trade tensions and reduce the uncertainty. And remember, the US is the IMF's largest shareholder, so this statement is quite significant. It is a rare criticism of the United States. But the IMF's concerns are valid. A global recession cannot be ruled out this year. Look at what JP Morgan is saying. It is the biggest American bank. It has raised the odds of a global recession to 60%, 60. Earlier, that figure was 40%. So Trump's tariff announcement has caused a 20% bump. The World Trade Organization, or WTO, is alarmed too. It has projected a 1% fall in global trade. Now, this is a contraction of 1%. And the WTO says that it is deeply concerned because tariffs would lead to a chain reaction. Although Washington is downplaying it, the US Vice President JD Vance says this is, and I'm quoting, this is just one bad day for the markets. Although he did warn about long-term pain.
You don't fix that stuff overnight. We know people are struggling. We're fighting as quickly as we can to fix what was left to us, but it's not going to happen immediately.
So how would this play out? Tariffs will make imported goods expensive. This will reduce the demand for goods, which in turn will impact factories, the ones that make these goods. The factories will be forced to cut supplies. This will disrupt supply chains and the job market. The high entry barriers will force companies to rethink their strategy. They will have to consider the cost of tariffs. They will have to relocate to avoid them. And none of this will happen overnight. But if the tariffs stay, it will happen. Hence the long-term pain. This is Donald Trump's gift to the world. What happens when you tariff the whole world? Simple, the world hits back. And President Donald Trump is learning that the hard way. Most countries have vowed retaliation. Some have already done it, like Canada and China. Yesterday, Canada imposed tariffs on US goods, specifically on American cars. Most of them will soon attract 25% tariffs. And how many vehicles would it affect? Nearly 67,000 every year.
As I told President Trump during our call last week, Canada will respond to the U.S. auto tariffs. And today I'm announcing that the Government of Canada will be responding by matching the U.S. approach, with 25% tariffs on all vehicles imported from the United States that are not compliant with CUSMA.
Remember, Trump had already imposed steep tariffs on Canada, so he spared them on Wednesday, but his auto tariffs will affect Canada. Trump has slapped 25% tariffs on all foreign cars, 25%, which is why Canada has hit back. China too has retaliated. They will impose 34% tariffs on all US goods. Why 34? Because that's what Trump is planning to charge China. He had already imposed a 20% blanket tariff on them. This week he added 34% to that. China's tariffs will come into effect on the 10th of April. They're also curbing the sale of rare earths. 7 items used in consumer electronics have been listed. China will limit their exports to the US, and they're not done yet. Beijing is also taking Trump to court. They have already filed a lawsuit at the WTO, the World Trade Organization. China says Trump's tariffs violate established trade rules. Now, all of these are major moves. They pit the world's biggest economies against each other, America versus China, the top 2 global economies. Their bilateral trade is worth $580 billion. And that trade is now at major risk. Trump's tariffs will kick in on April 9 and China's on April 10. Meaning, next week, we will officially be in a trade war. Of course, this was expected from China. How else would a rival react to tariffs? But more worrying for Trump should be Europe's reaction. Yesterday, EU President Ursula von der Leyen promised retaliation. Later, French President Emmanuel Macron proposed a new idea. He wants to suspend all European investments in America.
I think what's important, and that's all the work that must be done by the sector, that future investments or investments announced in recent weeks should be suspended until things are clarified with the United States. Because what message will it send to have big European players investing billions of euros in the American economy at a time when we're being hit?
So how much money is at stake here? EU companies have invested $2.4 trillion in the US. That is the total investment. 2.4 trillion, obviously you cannot reverse the past deals. You can only suspend the new ones. And this will have a big impact on the US economy, but it also reveals Europe's insecurity. Many EU firms are trying to cut deals with Trump. Basically, they're trying to get individual concessions. For example, shipping firm CMA CGM, they announced $20 billion of investments in America. Luxury goods giant LVMH is planning more US investments. But now French President Macron is warning against it. He wants Europe to respond in one voice. And chances are they will hit back in kind. But expect it to take more time. The EU is expected to announce one round of tariffs by mid-April. They will target symbolic US goods like blue jeans, orange juice, and Harley-Davidson bikes. Now, just to be clear, this is not a response to this week's tariff. This is a response to Trump's earlier steel and aluminum tariffs. And that's the thing about the European Union. They always work behind schedule. Next is Britain. Trump has imposed just 10% tariffs on them. He says Prime Minister Keir Starmer was quite happy about it.
We're talking to the Prime Minister about it, and we'll see how that turns out. We have a very good dialogue going. And I think he was very happy about how we treated them with tariffs.
The UK is trying to reach a trade deal with America. At the same time, they're drawing up plans to retaliate. London is making a list of US goods that can be targeted. They have set a deadline of May 1st. If a deal is not reached by then, they will impose tariffs on America. So the UK's approach is more cautious. And they're not alone. A number of countries are pursuing talks. Argentina, Mexico, India, Japan, South Korea. None of these countries have hit back yet. Instead, they're trying to talk things out with President Trump. A few countries are also planning ahead. They know that certain industries will be hit by the tariffs, so they're setting aside money to support them. For example, Taiwan, their government has announced a package of $2.7 billion. This will mostly help industries and agriculture. The fact is, every country would like to settle this issue with talks. After all, the US is the biggest market in the world. But the problem is, they don't know what Trump wants. Does he want to reduce the deficit? Does he want to make in America? Does he want fairer trade rules, or does he want all of this? It is not clear. And remember, these responses will keep piling up. Has to deal with tariffs from all over the world. Let's see how long Trump can keep this up.
It's a separate category that we'll be announcing that sometime in the near future, not too distant future.
Thursday, until it wasn't. The markets opened, they bled, and by the closing bell, the top 500 companies lost around $2.5 trillion. $2.5 trillion, it's not because of a military conflict. It's not because of oil or even Silicon Valley drama. It's Trump's tariff announcement. That is what tanked the stocks. It was a seismic sell-off. For the Magnificent Seven, the tremors ran deep. I'm talking about America's tech giants, Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, Meta, Microsoft, Nvidia, and Tesla. Together, they're called the Magnificent Seven. It's because of their dominance of the stock market, these seven companies. But yesterday, they stumbled, and how? The Magnificent Seven lost a combined total of $1 trillion. $1 trillion wiped out in a day. The worst hit was Apple. Apple shed $310 billion in just one day, and it's because of how Apple operates. About 80% of iPhones are produced in China. India produces around 7%, and Vietnam assembles 20% iPads. Now, all of these nations have been hit by high tariffs. And the math was brutal. According to some estimates, Apple's costs could go up by $40 billion every single year, 40. The tariffs leave Apple with a difficult choice. Option 1, pass on the higher costs and hope that the consumers will not mind. Option 2, swallow the tariffs and see the profit slump. Chances are they will choose option 1 and pass on the cost to the consumer, which means iPhones will get even more expensive. Right now, the iPhone 16 sells in the US for $799. It could go up to $1,142. The iPhone 16 Pro Max currently sells for up to $1,599, almost $1,600. That could rise to almost $2,300, a $2,300 phone. Will people even buy it? That's what's worrying investors. And that is why Apple stocks are slumping. Then there's Nvidia, everyone's favorite chip maker. Its chips are produced in Taiwan. The island got slapped with a 32% tariff. But here's the twist. Semiconductors themselves are technically exempt from the tariffs. There is no tariff on them yet, on semiconductors. But the stuff they go into is not exempt. Things like your laptops, servers, gaming rigs. These are not exempt from tariffs, which is why Nvidia lost around $210 billion. The third big loser was Amazon. Amazon is heavily dependent on Chinese imports. It lost around $180 billion, $180 billion. And it's the same issue again. 20% of all Amazon goods come from China. So the new tariffs will impact the company. They will set it back by millions of dollars every year. But it wasn't just the Magnificent Seven that bore the brunt. Retail companies too are being clotheslined, quite literally. American retail has always been a quiet symphony of foreign parts. T-shirts, it functioned like a seamless orchestra. But tariffs have turned it into cacophony. Take Nike, for example. The company relies on a vast global supply chain, and that is going to cost it. Nike makes half of its shoes in Vietnam and China. So your sneakers will get more expensive. By how much? Estimates suggest around $30 to $40 per shoe. That's how much the price could rise. Then there's the auto industry. As we've been telling you, there's a 25% tariff on cars and car parts. It is to revive American manufacturing, but for now, it is bringing back layoffs. US car maker Stellantis is laying off 900 people. It is at 5 of its American facilities. It is also shutting down 2 plants, one in Mexico and the other in Canada.
It's scary. And a lot of people are scared of change, but I think they're more scared of not knowing what's going to happen. Change is a little bit easier to navigate. At least you know the variables. Here, we don't know the variables. That's the scary part.
Even airlines couldn't escape this bloodbath. United dropped by 16%, Delta fell 11%, and Frontier took a 12% dive. Now you may wonder, why is that? Why are airlines affected? That is because higher tariffs make everything cost more. There's jet fuel, imported parts, snacks, and probably even those tiny airplane pillows that no one really uses. All of this, in fact, is going to cost more. So it's looking like a lost flight. Thankfully, not everyone ended up face down on the mat. For example, the pharma industry. For now, they're exempt from the tariffs. There was some relief there, but that ended with Trump's ominous warning. Listen to this.
Pharma is going to be starting to come in, I think, at a level that you haven't really seen before. We are looking at pharma right now, pharmaceuticals, as a separate category. And we'll be announcing that sometime in the near future, not too distant future. That's under review right now.
So here's the thing. Tariffs are not just taxes on imports. These are taxes on how the modern economy works. We live in the era of global supply chains. A T-shirt might be designed in Los Angeles, stitched in Cambodia, dyed in Vietnam, and shipped via Singapore. Break that chain, and you're not just disrupting business, you are disrupting globalization. And for many companies, that means rebuilding supply chains from scratch, and that too at an enormous cost. So Trump's tariffs are more than a policy. They are a rejection of the interconnected global economy. Some will call it protectionism, others will call it long overdue realism. But whatever you call it, it has teeth. And those teeth are leaving marks on companies worldwide. Now let's look at Russia, a country the West desperately wanted to isolate. When the war in Ukraine began in 2022, the Western powers had a strategy. They cancelled Russia. They closed their embassies in Moscow, they slapped sanctions and seized Russian assets. They removed Moscow from global financial systems, and this forced hundreds of Western businesses to shut shop in Russia. Big names like Apple, McDonald's, Mercedes-Benz all made an exit. The message was clear: no business with Moscow. All of this happened in 2022. We are now more than 3 years into the war, and with the new president in the White House, things are changing significantly and rapidly. The US president is engaging with Russia. Donald Trump is speaking to Vladimir Putin. Their diplomats are meeting frequently. They're working on a peace deal, and they're talking about normalizing relations with Russia. This is a drastic shift in American policy just from 5 months ago. Washington's strategy is going from boycott to business. And on cue, Western companies are eyeing a comeback. They want to return to Russia. But they have one concern: sanctions. They want the sanctions to be lifted so that business can go back to normal. And this is easier said than done, because look at the scale of the sanctions. The West has slapped, and listen to this, the West has slapped more than 28,000 sanctions on Moscow. Yes, 28,000 sanctions. Removing even a few will be a long drawn process. And there are other roadblocks too. like re-entry. You see, Western firms spent the last 3 years ending operations in Russia. This included closing down outlets, abandoning supply chains, and finding alternative markets. All of this takes time. Many Western businesses even sold off their stakes to Russian businesses. McDonald's is a good example. Before the war, it had 800 outlets in Russia. It sold all of them. They're now rebranded as Vkusno and Tochka. That's what McDonald's is called in Russia. Then there is Starbucks. They too sold their units to a Russian restaurant chain. Starbucks is now called Stars Coffee in Russia. And these are just two examples. There are hundreds like these. From retail giants to food chains to car makers, every Western brand was in a rush to exit Russia. It was all part of a plan. The West called it economic isolation, and let me tell you, it has failed miserably. Because once Western firms made their exit, others swooped in. The void in Russian markets was filled quickly. Indian, Chinese, and Turkish companies made their moves. And now they're making profits. Western boardrooms see this and they're asking themselves one question: did we make a mistake? They want to return now because Russia remains a lucrative market. It is the 11th largest economy in the world. It has more than 140 million customers. This is a country rich in oil, gas, and minerals, not to mention a major military power. So Russia will always be in business. And if you're a business firm, you don't just walk away from a market like this. Western companies did, and they're paying the price for it. Which brings us to the next question. Who will return first? Most likely companies that are not directly affected by the sanctions, like retailers and food producers. American cosmetic giant Avon and beverage firm PepsiCo are examples. Fun fact, both these firms never fully exited Russia. They continued doing their business silently, and they're eyeing a full comeback now. Who else is plotting a return? French car giant Renault is another name. They too want to return to Russia, and it's not just the Western players who are rethinking the boycott. South Korean companies want to return too. Firms like Hyundai, Samsung, and LG, they want to be back. Again, because next. If Western firms return, it will be a PR nightmare for their governments. It would undermine the sanctions and send a mixed signal to Ukraine. Do they want Western businesses to return? President Putin says he's open to the idea, but he wants compensation for the shoddy exit. Listen to this.
The market situation is different. Their cost is different now. That's why it's obvious that every such deal will require a separate thorough consideration. If niches have already been taken by Russian companies, as I said earlier, and as the saying goes, the ship has sailed.
The West was desperate to isolate Putin. Western businesses left Russia to make a statement. But in this period, the Russian economy grew more than many G7 members. So after all their preaching and lecturing, the businesses want back in. Moral of the story? Profits trump politics.
288 votes in favor versus 232 votes in the opposition in the Lok Sabha, and 128 votes in favor versus only 95 votes in the opposition in the Rajya Sabha. This is how the Narendra Modi government has been able to pull off a big victory on the Waqf Amendment 2025 bill in the Parliament. 12-hour plus discussions on the both houses of Parliament over consecutive days. Home Minister Amit Shah sitting through the entire discussion to ensure all went by plan. not only have the NDA partners like the JDU, the TDP, the LJP, the RLD stuck all the way through with the government on this legislation, but even adversaries like the Biju Janata Dal moved towards the NDA while voting in the Rajya Sabha, notching up a big total of 128 MPs in support of the bill in the Rajya Sabha, while the NDA official strength is only 123. The Waqf Amendment Bill is a major ideological project of the BJP. After the abrogation of Article 370, the Ram Temple, the Triple Talaq legislation, the Modi 3.0 has come up with its biggest move so far in its third term and within the first year of Modi 3.0, which is the Waqf Amendment Bill 2025. When Mr. Modi took oath as the Prime Minister on June 9th last year, within 2 months of that, on August 8th, the Modi government introduced the Waqf Amendment Bill inside the Parliament. Literally midnight oil was burned by the government to bring this bill to Parliament within 2 months of its third term. But the government knew, and the BJP especially knew, that its allies like the JDU, the TDP, the LJP, the RLD may have issues with certain provisions of the bill because they have large Muslim vote banks in their respective states. That is
Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. You may have heard this saying before, but you know who's actually practicing it right now? Donald Trump. The US recently sold F-16 jets to Taiwan and the Philippines. It also announced a new war command in Japan. And now American generals have met their counterparts in China. This meeting was held in Shanghai, the first of its kind since Trump's return. And what was on the agenda? Unsafe and unprofessional actions by the Chinese military. That's what the Americans called it. Unsafe and unprofessional. They flagged the latest Chinese drills around Taiwan and said that Beijing's actions were dangerous. So on one hand, Trump tariffs China and arms its neighbors. On the other, he sends his generals to talk to the Chinese. Our next report decodes the strategy.
The Indo-Pacific region has been quite turbulent this week. China held 2-day live-fire drills around Taiwan. Beijing wanted to send a message that Taiwan's independence would not be entertained. The drills saw large participation from the Chinese Navy and Air Force. Chinese warships practiced a naval blockade of the island. The Chinese Air Force simulated airstrikes on Taiwan. China said the drills were about preparing its military for war. The drills lasted 2 days. Chinese military assets are now back to base, and there's a reason for this: Donald Trump. The US president recently sent his generals to China. The US military officials met their Chinese counterparts in Shanghai. These were the first working-level talks between the two militaries since Trump's return to the White House. The talks were part of the Military Maritime Consultative Agreement, a working group that meets twice every year. And here's why the latest discussions were significant. The American generals flagged their concerns openly, and the talks were focused on 2 things. First, unsafe and unprofessional actions by the Chinese Navy and Air Force. The US generals refer to the latest Chinese drills around Taiwan. But they had other complaints as well. That brings us to point number 2. Dangerous aerial passes by China's Air Force in the Indo-Pacific. Chinese fighter jets have increased dangerous maneuvers against foreign military aircraft in recent years. The most recent incident was in February. A Chinese J-16 fighter jet released flares in close proximity to an Australian military plane. And this trend is only increasing in frequency. Until recently, Chinese jets would often only harass American aircraft over the South China Sea. But now they're also harassing America's allies in the region. And the US generals raised this with their Chinese counterparts in Shanghai. So, how did China respond to the lecturing? Like a teenager at best. Chinese generals tried to gaslight. They accused the United States of provocative actions in the South China Sea. They said American warships sailing through the Taiwan Strait were the reason for China's aggression. The Chinese generals then told their American counterparts that they would respond to all provocative and dangerous actions by the United States. In the end, the talks pointed to one thing, that the Indo-Pacific is still tense. The timing of these talks is also noteworthy. They come shortly after US Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth visited the region. He assured more American support to Japan and the Philippines. In Tokyo, he announced a new war command. After he returned to the United States, the Trump administration approved the sale of 20 F-16 jets to the Philippines. Ties between Beijing and Washington have been strained over Taiwan and the Indo-Pacific, but Trump wants the US to stay committed to the region. The recent developments show that Trump is serious about China. Like many countries, he sees them as a threat to peace and stability. The military talks are important to keep the lines of communication open, because the last thing the region needs is an isolated China escalating its aggressive behavior.
The big meeting has finally happened between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Bangladesh's interim chief, Mohammad Yunus. It's taken a long time coming. Yunus took charge in August last year. Since then, he's met a lot of world leaders. Former US President Joe Biden, Chinese President Xi Jinping, Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, even Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. It took him 8 months to meet India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. That in itself tells a story. Nonetheless, both leaders met in Bangkok today. They were in Thailand for the BIMSTEC summit. BIMSTEC is a regional grouping. India and Bangladesh are among the members. There was chatter about a possible meeting on the sidelines of the summit, but the lead-up was not encouraging. Yunus visited China before traveling to Thailand. He also took a dig at India's northeast. And after that, a meeting looked very unlikely, but that's diplomacy for you. Even amid tensions, you try to make things work. So Modi and Yunus spoke for almost 40 minutes. They were joined by delegations from both sides. Afterwards, Yunus also presented a gift to Prime Minister Modi. It was a portrait from 2015. Back then, Yunus had attended the Indian Science Congress in Mumbai. There he was given a gold medal by Prime Minister Modi. A picture of that event was presented as a gift today, so the optics were good. What about the substance? There's a lot to unpack there. The Indian statement has 3 main points. Number 1, Prime Minister Modi voiced support for a democratic, stable and inclusive Bangladesh. He said India's approach would be people-centric. He also said the relationship should be based on pragmatism. That's point number 1. Number 2, and this is important, Prime Minister Modi asked Yunus to protect religious minorities. He urged Dhaka to investigate instances of atrocities.
Prime Minister also underlined India's concerns related to the safety and security of minorities in Bangladesh, including Hindus, and expressed his expectation that the government of Bangladesh would ensure their security, including by thoroughly investigating all cases of atrocities committed against them.
And finally, number 3, Prime Minister Modi cautioned against rhetoric that vitiates the environment. This is a timely warning by the Indian Prime Minister, because the rhetoric from Dhaka has been reckless. We've heard officials talking about breaking up India's northeast, even blaming India for last year's floods. This week, Yunus himself joined in. He said this in China, that India's northeast was landlocked and that Bangladesh is the guardian of the Indian Ocean. Many in India see that as a subtle threat. So to sum it up, Prime Minister Narendra Modi did what was expected. He offered his support to Dhaka, but he also drew red lines. And how did Yunus respond? Well, Dhaka's statement is a lot more extensive. It has 4 main points. Number 1, Yunus praised Bangladesh's ties with Dhaka. He also thanked New Delhi for its support back in 1971. And this is also significant. Yunus has been diluting the 1971 legacy, yet he recalled it during his meeting with Prime Minister Modi. So that's point number one. Number two, he raised the issue of Sheikh Hasina. Remember, Dhaka has asked India to extradite Hasina, but New Delhi has not responded yet. India's Foreign Secretary was asked about this, and he said, it is not the time to comment.
देखिए, जहां तक शेख हसीना का सवाल है और उनके सिलसिले में जो बांग्लादेश की ओर से एक निवेदन आया है, मैं इसके बारे में इस समय पे इसके बारे में बातचीत हुई थी और जो हमारे स्पोक्स पर्सन हैं उन्होंने पहले ही इसके बारे में आपको अवगत किया है कि हमारे पास इस मुद्दे पे एक निवेदन आया है। इस समय इस विषय पे कुछ और कहना मेरे लिए उचित नहीं होगा।
Yunus also raised the issue of Hasina's speeches from India. He said her statements were false and inflammatory. And how did Prime Minister Modi respond? He blamed social media for the tensions around Hasina's remarks. He also reaffirmed that India's commitment is to the people of Bangladesh, not a person, party or organization. Number three, Yunus raised the issue of border killings. Dhaka has accused Indian troops of firing at Bangladeshis, but Prime Minister Modi set the record straight. He said Indian troops only fire in self-defense. He also talked about preventing illegal border crossings, especially at night. And finally, number four, Yunus refused to accept the attacks on minorities. He said the bulk of them were fake news. He also urged Prime Minister Modi to send reporters to find out the truth. And that sums up the key takeaways. Now let's look at the impact. Since last year, India has tried to build a working relationship with Dhaka. Today's meeting is further proof of that India has kept the door open for talks. But is Bangladesh willing? Reports say Mohammad Yunus requested this meeting. In his remarks, he also called for deepening ties. But in this case, actions matter more than words. Yunus is adamant about testing India's red lines and patience, whether it's obsessing over Sheikh Hasina's extradition or dismissing concerns about minorities. And that's the gulf that both sides will have to address. India says, let's turn a new page. Dhaka says, let's turn the pages back. It's good that both sides are meeting to understand each other. It is also an admission of how important this relationship is. But for meaningful progress, Dhaka must walk the talk. The Prime Minister's trip is not over. After Thailand, he is visiting Sri Lanka. He landed in Colombo just a short while ago. Prime Minister Modi is the first world leader to visit Sri Lanka under their new president. We've spoken about him before. Sri Lanka elected a new president in September last year. His name is Anurakumara Dissanayake. Most Sri Lankans call him AKD. During the campaign, he was seen as China's favorite. But as president, he's been his own man. In December, Dissanayake made his first foreign trip as president, and unlike Mohammad Yunus, he visited India. Now he's hosting his first state visit, and once again, he invited India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The question is, where do we go next? Tomorrow will be the moving day of this visit. Modi and Dissanayake are expected to sign a number of deals on energy, on digitization, on healthcare, and on debt repayment. Remember, Sri Lanka faced a major economic crisis in 2022. One of the triggers was China's steep loans. It was India that stepped up to help. New Delhi gave assistance worth $4 billion to Sri Lanka. Today, the island is returning to normal. So now it's time to kick on, to go beyond bailouts and stabilization. Prime Minister Modi will be breaking ground for a new project tomorrow, a joint solar power plant of 120 megawatt. Talks may also focus on the proposed Trincomalee refinery. Trincomalee is located in northeast Sri Lanka. India is looking to turn it into an energy hub. Once completed, it will compete with China's hub in the south, in Hambantota. Beyond this, a defense deal is also on the cards. Both leaders discussed this in December. They will be hoping to conclude it tomorrow. And if that happens, it will be huge. The deal involves closer ties between the two militaries, things like joint maritime surveillance, joint military exercises, and even equipment support. There is talk of India giving more weapons to Sri Lanka. Again, this will be very, very significant. It will be the first formal defense deal since 1987, since India's doomed peacekeeping mission in Sri Lanka. It was a traumatic period for both sides, but they're trying to move on. And I know all of this makes it sound like this is a perfect relationship. It's not. There are irritants. Before Prime Minister Modi's trip, the Tamil Nadu Assembly passed a resolution. It was adopted unanimously on Wednesday. And what did it say? That India should try to retrieve an island from Sri Lanka, the Kachativu Island. It is located between India and Sri Lanka. After independence, both countries claimed this island. But in 1974, they signed a border deal. India and Sri Lanka signed a border deal. 1974, India gave up its claims over Kachativu. New Delhi basically admitted that it was Sri Lankan land. But Tamil Nadu's leaders did not. Successive governments in this state have questioned New Delhi's decision. In fact, in March last year, Prime Minister Modi also talked about it. He blamed the Congress party for giving away Kachativu. He said it weakened India's interests. The matter is further complicated by the fishing angle. If you own Kachativu, you own the waters around it, meaning more area to fish in. And this is a big concern for India. Our fishermen often mistakenly sail into Lankan waters. A lot of them end up getting arrested by Colombo. In 2024, 530 Indian fishermen were taken into custody. This year, 2025, 147 have been held so far. Some of them have later complained about mistreatment. Prime Minister Modi may take up the issue of fishermen tomorrow, but Kachativu, that looks unlikely right now. It's important to build on the positives at the moment, because if we don't, China will. Despite the debt trap, Beijing has continued to pump money into Sri Lanka. In January, President Dissanayake visited Beijing. He signed 15 deals with China. It shows the new reality of Sri Lanka. Whether we like it or not, China is there to stay. India's priority must be to limit their influence and to ensure that Colombo puts India over China. Now let's talk about TikTok, the social media giant. Once again, its future in the US hangs in the balance. It faces a shutdown in the country unless it sells to an American company by tomorrow. So a range of bidders are racing up to buy the Chinese app. US President Donald Trump says that he is, and I'm quoting, he is very close to brokering a deal and that he would like to see TikTok remain alive. Those are his words. But will it remain alive? Will the app be sold by the weekend? Who is expected to buy it? And if TikTok does not reach a deal, what happens next? Here's a report.
Rumors are swirling. The list of would-be buyers is growing. The deadline is looming. And the future of TikTok in the US is at stake again. TikTok is a social media giant. It has 170 million users in the US who spend 51 minutes per day on the app, on average. And their government is not happy with it. TikTok is owned by the Chinese company ByteDance. Washington has said that TikTok poses a threat to national security because Beijing might access its treasure trove of user data. Chinese authorities have denied this claim. So has TikTok. But last year, the US Congress passed a bipartisan law. It mandates ByteDance sell the app, or face, being shut down in the country. This January, US President Donald Trump signed an executive order. He postponed the ban or divest deadline until April. This delayed the ban by 75 days. And now, the time is almost up. The app faces a US ban unless it sells to an American company by tomorrow, April 5th. So who will buy TikTok? Much like the app's future, the list of those trying to buy it is veiled in ambiguity. But according to reports, it includes all kinds of bidders. From US tech giants to a British entrepreneur dubbed the king of homemade porn. Here are some names that have cropped up in recent weeks. Oracle co-founder Larry Ellison is apparently a top candidate. Trump has said that he would be open to selling TikTok to him. Amazon has put in a last-minute offer to the White House. Other potential buyers include billionaire Frank McCourt and Canadian businessman Kevin O'Leary, a celebrity investor on Shark Tank, along with Reddit co-founder Alexis Ohanian, who says that he has joined McCourt's bid. Then there is computing giant Microsoft, private equity company Blackstone, venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz, and search engine Perplexity AI. The founder of OnlyFans, Tim Stokely, has also offered to buy TikTok. So has the biggest YouTuber in the world, Jimmy Donaldson, who is popularly known as Mr. Beast. Trump also says that he would be okay with wonderchild Elon Musk buying the app, though the tech billionaire has said that he has no intention of doing so. Earlier this week, Trump said that multiple investors are closing in on a deal. And Vice President JD Vance says that the Trump administration is set to announce a deal ahead of the deadline. While it is still unclear who will win this race, in all probability, TikTok will be on the losing end. No one knows exactly which TikTok assets will be sold, or what would happen to its algorithm. Because that's where the power of the app lies. It decides what content users are exposed to, and it is the primary reason for its success. The White House is reportedly considering a deal where ByteDance would keep ownership of the algorithm but lease it to a new entity within the U.S. If this is not lucrative enough, Trump has another deal in mind. If China agrees to approve a TikTok sale, Trump tariffs on Chinese imports could get some relief. Despite this generosity, TikTok has not confirmed if it is even willing to do a deal. But it is sitting on a ticking time bomb. If no deal is reached by tomorrow, TikTok faces dark times ahead in the United States. Quite literally.
Have you ever watched live shopping channels where presenters demonstrate products, then viewers call in and buy them? Such shopping channels do not hold the same relevance that they once did. So younger generations are giving live shopping a makeover, a digital avatar. Today, live shopping mainly stands for live stream shopping. And these streams are as much sales pitches as they are entertainment. Hosts stand in front of a smartphone, or dozens of them. With an energetic patter, they hawk everything from cosmetics and clothes to detergents and microwaves, while the viewers ask them questions and place orders in the stream. The hosts make their sales pitches with the urgency of an auctioneer. They show off the latest finds in a real-time video. And they move fast. They present the items and sometimes even model them, all within the span of seconds. These hosts can go through hundreds of products in a single live stream, all while holding the viewers' attention with jokes, anecdotes, and best of all, live discounts and flash sales. Many of these hosts are so successful, they have tens of millions of loyal viewers. They make thousands of dollars in sales per show. And this is not surprising at all. Live shopping is a $682 billion global market. $682 billion. After all, it is not a new phenomenon. It has been part of the internet culture in the Asia-Pacific region for about a decade now. It is especially big in China, worth about $66 billion there. Their government calls it the new engine of e-commerce growth. And why wouldn't Beijing like it? Unemployment is soaring in the country, consumption is low, so a rising class of youngsters racing towards live shopping is good news. But China is not alone here. Live shopping is a major trend in Singapore and the Philippines as well. And now European and American sellers are experimenting with it. While still in its nascent stage, live shopping is a $32 billion market in the US. According to a survey, 45% consumers have hopped on to the trend. But this is not to say that live shopping is for everyone. And I will give you 3 reasons why. First, critics think that it has a limited appeal. You cannot try on different sizes before buying something. You may not be able to exchange products, and you need a keen eye because products can go by fast. This is quite unlike online shopping platforms like Amazon, where you can browse at a glacial pace. You don't have to be afraid of missing out. The only scared party is your wallet. So that's one issue. Secondly, not all products work on live shopping streams like jeans, because shopping for jeans is painful irrespective of the platform. And third, selling on live shopping is not as easy as it looks. Hosts need a good product and an even better personality to attract buyers. But if you manage to succeed, then this is a lucrative business. It is a game changer for many businesses, including global brands from Kit Kat to Samsung and IKEA to Louis Vuitton. Brands often pay influencers to stream their products and routinely announce hundreds of millions of dollars in sales in a single sitting. Even Kim Kardashian has tried to sell her perfume on a Chinese stream and she sold 15,000 bottles within minutes. And brands or hosts are not the only ones who benefit, so do the platforms. People live sell on social media. In the West, TikTok is a big part of this growing trend. It hosts more than 6,000 live shopping sessions every day. Then you have dozens of softwares and apps. They're dedicated to live shopping, much like the buyers and sellers who are jumping on this bandwagon, because live shopping is not just retail therapy, it is a craze that shows no signs of stopping.
288 votes in favor versus 232 votes in the opposition in the Lok Sabha and 128 votes in favor versus only 95 votes in the opposition in the Rajya Sabha. This is how the Narendra Modi government has been able to pull off a big victory on the Waqf Amendment 2025 bill in the Parliament. 12-hour plus discussions in the both houses of Parliament over consecutive days. Home Minister Amit Shah sitting through the entire discussion to ensure all went by plan. Not only have the NDA partners like the JDU, the TDP, the LJP, the RLD stuck all the way through with the government on this legislation, but even adversaries like the Biju Janata Dal moved towards the NDA while voting in the Rajya Sabha, notching up a big total of 128 MPs in support of the bill in the Rajya Sabha, while the NDA official strength is only 123. The Waqf Amendment Bill is a major ideological project of the BJP. After the abrogation of Article 370, the Ram Temple, the Triple Talaq legislation, the Modi 3.0 has come up with its biggest move so far in its third term and within the first year of Modi 3.0, which is the Waqf Amendment Bill 2025. When Mr. Modi took oath as the Prime Minister on June 9th last year, within 2 months of that, on August 8th, the Modi government introduced the Waqf Amendment Bill inside the Parliament. Literally midnight oil was burned by the government to bring this bill to Parliament within 2 months of its third term. But the government knew, and the BJP especially knew, that its allies like the JDU, the TDP, the LJP, the RLD may have issues with certain provisions of the bill because they have large Muslim vote banks in their respective states. That is the reason that the BJP did the smart move, agreed immediately to a joint parliamentary committee of 31 members giving representation to all its allies as well as the opposition members, and the JP.
Now it's time for Vantage Shots. Images that tell the story. Arson suspected as wildfire ravages central Honduras. Britain's King Charles gets musical as he plays a song on a carrot. And Qatar's skies light up during the Lusail festival. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1949, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, was established. It was formed in the aftermath of the Second World War. NATO started with 12 founding members. It aimed to ensure collective security and deter Soviet expansion. Today, NATO has 32 member states. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend.
Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I'm Anand Narasimhan, and this Friday edition we start with the Waqf Amendment Bill that's found passage through both the houses in Parliament. The Rajya Sabha passed the Waqf Amendment Bill 2025 in the wee hours of Friday after a fiery debate on the matter. The debate that began on Thursday afternoon went well past midnight. The upper house debated the bill for nearly 14 hours and then cleared it with 128 votes in favour and 95 against. The legislation was earlier votes in favour and 232 against. Now with this, both the houses have cleared the decks for the amendment.